I can't believe he left me here. Emma Carter whispered to the whipping wind as snowflakes slapped her cheeks like icy whispers of betrayal, the night stretching endlessly around her, a blanket of white muting every distant sound, each breath fogging in the frigid air, heart pounding not only with fear, but with the ache of abandonment, the small curve of her belly pressing uncomfortably against her coat, a reminder of the life she carried alone. The forest road ahead vanished into shadows, bare branches scratching at the gray sky, the moonlight glinting off frost-covered limbs, casting jagged, skeletal patterns on the untouched snow, her boots sinking into the powdery surface with every tentative step, the cold biting through layers of fabric, numbing fingers that trembled as she fumbled for warmth, the sound of her own labored breath echoing in the stillness. Each exhale a plume of white that mingled with the drifting snow. Memories flooded unbidden of Ryan Blackwood's calm voice promising he would always protect her, the deceptive warmth in his eyes that once felt like sanctuary, now just a phantom, mocking from the recesses of her mind. The streetlights she passed casting pale circles on the snow, like distant eyes watching her struggle, distant yet piercing, while the cold seemed to seep deeper into her bones with every step, the sensation of isolation almost tangible, as if the world had been reduced to this single, frozen expanse, and in that silence, she could hear the echo of her own heartbeat, rapid, insistent, defiant. Each flake of snow settling on her eyelashes, tiny crystals reflecting the faint glow of the moon, her thoughts oscillating between panic and determination. She refused to fall, refused to give in to despair, pressing on through the drifted snow, boots crunching in a rhythm almost like a heartbeat, the wind tugging at her coat, urging her to turn back, to give up. But Emma straightened her spine, lifting her chin, drawing on a reservoir of strength she hadn't realized she still possessed, reminding herself of the warmth of the life she had built with her own hands in the city, the small apartment filled with books and the scent of roasted coffee lingering in the corners, a sanctuary she could return to, a life that could wait just beyond this frozen path. And yet here she was, forced to endure the cruelty of the present, testing the boundaries of her courage. Each step forward a silent act of defiance against the man who thought he could define her, against the fear that tried to pin her to the icy ground. Every inhale a declaration that she would survive this night, that she would carry her child through this storm, the snow whipping around her in a relentless dance as though testing the limits of her will. And in the midst of that relentless white, a faint glimmer of headlights appeared, cutting through the storm, a promise of unexpected salvation, the warmth of hope on the horizon, not knowing who would arrive, but feeling the stirrings of relief like a pulse through her numb fingers, the first thread of comfort weaving its way through the tension, urging her onward, not yet safe, but moving. And every flake of snow seemed to sparkle with the possibility that the night's trials could be survived, that the story was not yet over, and that Emma Carter, though abandoned, was about to encounter a force beyond the cruelty that had cast her into this frozen solitude. The headlights of the approaching truck cut through the swirling snow, a beacon of warmth against the relentless cold, and Emma Carter felt a jolt of hope pulse through her chest as the vehicle drew closer, its tires crunching over the thick blanket of ice and frost. Jake Miller swung the door open, his expression a mixture of concern and determination, and without a word he extended his hand, guiding her into the cab where the heater hummed, wrapping her in a cocoon of heat and relative safety. The leather seats soft beneath her, and the aroma of diesel mingling with the faint scent of pine that had clung to the snowy night air. Emma sank into the seat, shivering, her hands pressed to her belly as the adrenaline slowly ebbed, and the first moments of relief began to settle around her like a warm shawl, her breath still shallow and quick, the snowstorm outside transforming into a blur of white and gray through the windshield, each flake illuminated by the truck's lights, as if sparkling. In solidarity with her struggle, Jake kept a steady hand on the wheel, glancing at her with quiet reassurance, the low rumble of the engine a grounding counterpoint to the storm's howl, and Emma found herself focusing on the small acts of kindness that were restoring her spirit, each wordless gesture a thread pulling her back from the edge of despair, each measured turn of the wheel a reminder that someone cared enough to ensure she survived the night. Contractions began to tighten again, a reminder of the life she carried and the responsibility now pressing more urgently than ever, and Jake adjusted his driving, slowing slightly, offering her an armrest, a blanket, a voice of calm guidance, his presence a shield against the chaos outside, and Emma focused on the rhythm of her own breath, counting the beats, anchoring herself, feeling the small life inside respond to her calm. Through the cab window, the world was a white abyss, but inside, warmth, safety, and a fragile sense of hope began to weave together. Emma's eyes scanning the interior, finding small comforts, the seatbelt snug but not tight, the heater blowing a steady stream of warmth, her coat now slightly damp with melting snow yet comforting in its familiar weight. And in those moments she allowed herself to imagine a future, fleeting glimpses of a home where the storm would only be a memory, where she and her child would survive, thrive, and find peace. Every flicker of light from the passing street lamps and reflective signs created tiny constellations on the snow, and she clung to these as symbols, fragments of beauty in a night filled with uncertainty. While the truck moved steadily through the storm, each mile marking not just distance traveled but the space between her despair and the hope she now tentatively embraced, feeling the presence of Jake as a steady heartbeat alongside her own, a companion in this unforeseen trial. And as the night stretched on, the snow began to thin slightly, the first hints of moonlight breaking through the clouds, casting a silvery glow over the white expanse, and Emma allowed a small, shaky smile, a recognition that while the journey was far from over, the first critical step towards safety had been taken. The warmth in the cab a promise that she would endure, that she would meet the challenges to come with resilience, and that the night's trials were already yielding to the strength within her, a quiet determination that no storm, no abandonment, could extinguish. Emma Carter sat in the warmth of the truck cab, cradling her newborn, the rhythmic hum of the engine a soothing backdrop to the storm that had passed, snow still drifting softly against the windows as if the world itself had exhaled, a quiet witness to her survival. Outside, the first pale hints of dawn streaked across the sky, silver lights spilling over the snow-covered landscape, illuminating the path ahead that she would now navigate with her child in her arms. Each mile a testament to resilience and newfound hope, every breath a reminder that she had endured what few could imagine. Jake Miller kept his eyes on the road, the steady beat of his hands on the wheel a silent reassurance, occasionally glancing at Emma with a smile that conveyed more than words could capture, understanding the fragility and strength coexisting in this small, determined woman, knowing that this night would forever mark a turning point. Emma's mind drifted to the life she would build, the small apartment she would return to, the soft smell of coffee and fresh linen, awaiting, the shelves lined with books and art that had always been her sanctuary, and now, with her child beside her, the future shimmered with possibility, the warmth of family and home awaiting beyond the final bends of the road. As they approached a cleared stretch, the silhouette of a black luxury SUV emerged from the distance, its presence commanding and unfamiliar in the quiet morning light, and Emma's heart skipped, a mixture of caution and curiosity, as the figure stepping from the vehicle carried an air of authority, polished and composed, the faint gleam of sunlight catching the edge of a tailored coat and polished shoes, every detail signaling power and the life of someone accustomed to influence and wealth. The child in her arms stirred slightly, a tiny fist curling, and Emma instinctively drew the blanket closer, shielding them from the sudden awareness of being observed. Yet the warmth of her resolve did not falter, each step forward a statement that she and her child belonged to no one but themselves. The figure paused, gaze fixed, and for a moment the world seemed suspended. The snow, the truck, the early light, and the baby's soft coos all merging into a tableau of suspense, anticipation hanging in the crisp air as Emma met the eyes of the person who had once shaped so much of her past, now confronted with a life she had protected and nurtured despite every obstacle. In that instant, a quiet, potent tension filled the space between them, a silent reckoning where strength, independence, and the tender bond of mother and child spoke louder than any words ever could, the dawn light reflecting in Emma's eyes, resolute, aware, and unyielding, while outside the snow continued to settle, The storm passed, but the echoes of survival and empowerment lingering, a moment frozen in time, promising transformation and the unveiling of a life reclaimed. As the scene lingered, leaving the sense that the next chapter, however unexpected, would be met with the unshakable courage of a woman who had endured, survived, and now commanded her own story. The morning light grew stronger, illuminating the snow-dusted landscape as Emma Carter and Jake Miller navigated the winding back roads, the cab filled with a quiet, comforting warmth, the hum of the engine blending with the soft coos of her newborn, creating a rhythm that steadied both their hearts. Emma's hands rested gently on the child, feeling the tiny movements, each one a promise, a testament to the life she had protected through the storm, and she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The icy panic of the night fading into a fragile calm, replaced by determination and a dawning awareness of her own resilience. The trees lining the road glistened with frost, their branches sparkling in the early light, shadows stretching long across the snow, and every mile brought a growing sense of security, the cab shielding her from the harsh wind, each turn of the wheel a step further from the chaos she had endured, and yet closer to a future she was ready to claim for herself and her child. Emma glanced at Jake, noting the quiet confidence in his movements, the way he handled the truck with care, the subtle nods and gestures that reassured her without words, and she felt a deep gratitude, a recognition that sometimes survival was not only about endurance, but about the kindness of those who appeared when least expected. The first hints of town emerged ahead, rooftops sparkling under the frost, smoke curling from chimneys into the crisp air, signs of life that contrasted sharply with the desolate road they had traveled, and Emma's heartbeat quickened not with fear, but with cautious hope, imagining the warm interior of a small apartment. Waiting for them, the scent of coffee and clean laundry, soft blankets and familiar walls that had become her sanctuary. Yet even as relief began to settle, her mind lingered on the journey that had brought her here, on the choices made and the strength discovered. Each step of that night etched into memory, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil she had overcome, the cold and isolation replaced by connection, warmth, and the first fragile threads of trust. As they approached a small clearing, the luxury black SUV appeared again, its presence commanding, the polished finish gleaming in the growing light, the figure inside moving with a deliberate precision, and Emma's pulse quickened, a mixture of anticipation and wariness, recognizing the weight of the moment, the unspoken tension charged in the crisp morning air, her child stirring gently in her arms, tiny eyes blinking against the soft sunlight. She drew the blanket closer, adjusting the infant's position, and felt the quiet power of the decision to move forward, to claim safety and independence before confronting the echoes of the past, each second stretching with potential and suspense. Every glance at the approaching figure layered with questions of recognition, consequence, and the shift in control that had taken place over the long, harrowing hours. The snowflakes continued to drift lazily from the sky, now catching the early sunlight in delicate sparkles, and within the cab, the warmth enveloped them, a stark contrast to the cold white world beyond, while Emma's gaze remained steady on the scene unfolding, heart resolute, aware that the moment was a fulcrum between what had been endured and what was to come, a threshold she would cross with courage, carrying the promise of a new beginning for herself and the child she had protected against impossible odds. The truck slowed as it neared the edge of the clearing, the morning sun now spilling fully over the landscape, reflecting off the snow in dazzling sheets of white, and Emma Carter felt the steady warmth of the cab beneath her, the gentle vibrations of the engine a reassuring pulse beneath her hands as she held her newborn close. Each tiny movement a reminder of the life she had fought to protect, each breath a symbol of the hope she carried into the day. Jake Miller kept his eyes alert on the winding road, the tires crunching softly over patches of ice and frost, the rhythmic motion of the truck a subtle comfort that allowed Emma to center herself, focus on the small victories of survival and the quiet strength she had discovered within, the sound of her child's coos mixing with the hum of the engine in a harmony that spoke of resilience and life. Ahead, the luxury black SUV had stopped, the polished frame gleaming in the new light, and the figure that stepped from the vehicle carried an aura of calm authority, every movement. Deliberate and composed, an unmistakable presence that seemed to command the frozen landscape, and Emma's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with the sharp awareness of history, of moments past and choices made, the full weight of what had been endured and what was to come settling like a tangible layer around her. She adjusted the blanket over her child, instinctively shielding the tiny form, and in that protective gesture felt the clarity of her own resolve, a quiet power that had been forged through hours of fear, uncertainty, and perseverance. Every inch of the truck interior imbued with the warmth of safety, contrasted sharply with the cold expanse beyond the windows, snow drifting lazily from tree branches, catching the sunlight in tiny crystals that glimmered like distant stars. The figure paused, watching, and for a moment the world seemed suspended, the cab, the snow, the child, and the approaching presence all frozen in a tableau of anticipation, the tension between past and present thick but silent, electric in its subtlety. As Emma met the gaze of the man who once held so much influence over her life, recognizing in that moment the irrelevance of his past authority, the strength she now possessed, and the future that lay entirely within her control, each heartbeat, each small adjustment of her grip on the child, spoke volumes of survival, independence, and the quiet triumph of human resilience. The journey from night to morning mirrored in her own journey, from fear to hope, from abandonment to protection, from helplessness to self-possession. And as the first full rays of sun spread across the snow, Emma felt the solid promise of tomorrow, the calm but potent assurance that whatever came next would be faced with courage, determination, and the unshakable bond between her and the life she had saved, the scene lingering with the weight of possibility, anticipation, and the quiet victory of enduring beyond what had seemed insurmountable. The cab continued down the winding road, sunlight glinting off patches of ice and snow, casting a delicate shimmer across the landscape as Emma Carter adjusted the blanket around her newborn, feeling the steady warmth of the little body pressed close, each soft sigh a reminder of the life she had safeguarded through the long night. Jake Miller kept a careful watch on the road ahead, the tires crunching over the frost, his calm presence a subtle reassurance, every movement deliberate, measured, giving Emma space to center herself and feel the rhythm of survival that now pulsed through her, the faint hum of the heater mingling with the soft coos of the infant, creating a steady cadence that contrasted with the chaos of hours past. As the cab rounded a bend, the outline of the small town came into view, the roofs lightly dusted with snow, smoke curling gently from chimneys into the crisp morning air, and Emma's chest lifted with a sense of anticipation, imagining the warmth of a home. The aroma of coffee and baked bread, the soft embrace of familiarity waiting just beyond the edge of the road, a sanctuary she had earned through perseverance and courage. The black luxury SUV remained parked at the edge of the clearing, its polished surface gleaming in the morning light, and the figure who had emerged earlier stood silently, a composed presence exuding authority and calm, the sun catching the edge of the tailored coat and polished shoes, highlighting a life of control and power that had once seemed unattainable and now stood as a silent witness to the shift in circumstances. Emma's eyes meeting the gaze of the man with a quiet strength, assessing and weighing the resilience she had demonstrated, the determination evident in the protective way she held her child, the scene heavy with unspoken tension and the promise of change. Inside the cab, Emma felt a surge of confidence, a deep well of resolve solidifying with every breath, the events of the night coalescing into a narrative of survival and self-possession. Each mile traveled a symbolic step away from vulnerability and toward autonomy. The infant nestled safely in her arms, tiny fingers curling around the edge of the blanket, movements gentle but full of life, reinforcing the bond and the stakes that had driven her every action since the storm began. The sun climbed higher, warming the cab, melting frost on the windows and creating a soft, golden glow that illuminated the interior, and Emma allowed herself to imagine a day without fear, a life where choices would be hers alone, guided by instinct, strength, and the protective love she had cultivated. The external storm replaced by a sense of calm and possibility, the horizon stretching ahead with promise. The SUV figure remained at a respectful distance, silent but attentive, a subtle acknowledgement of the transition from past authority to present independence, the moment suspended in the delicate balance of light, space, and expectation, each second laden with the weight of what had been endured and the potential of what was yet to come. And as the cab moved closer to the town, the snow shimmering in the full morning light, Emma felt the first true sense of liberation, a recognition that the night's trials had not broken her, but had instead strengthened her resolve, cemented the bond with her child, and illuminated a path forward, where courage, resilience, and hope would guide every step of the journey yet to unfold, leaving the scene charged with anticipation, promise, and the quiet power of a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged unyielding. Emma Carter felt a shift in the rhythm of the journey as the truck turned onto a quieter street, the town emerging fully from the morning haze, rooftops dusted with snow and chimneys curling delicate spirals of smoke into the crisp air, a scene both ordinary and profoundly hopeful, and she held her newborn closer, feeling the warmth radiate and steady her own racing thoughts. Each soft coo a reminder of the life she had safeguarded and the strength she now carried within. Jake Miller navigated the streets with steady hands, eyes alert but calm, the hum of the engine and occasional creak of the suspension a familiar backdrop, allowing Emma to absorb the growing serenity of the scene outside, noticing details she had missed in the flurry of fear, the soft golden light touching the icy branches, the quiet movement of neighbors beginning their day, the promise of normalcy wrapped in winter beauty. Emma allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the layers of tension and relief coalesce into a fragile sense of accomplishment, the child in her arms shifting slightly, a tiny fist curling around the edge of the blanket, and in that gesture she felt a bond reinforced, a testament to her endurance, and a silent promise to protect, nurture, and guide this life forward no matter the challenges. As the truck approached a small clearing near the edge of town, the black luxury SUV remained, its presence understated yet commanding, the figure inside poised and still, observing with a quiet intensity that suggested anticipation rather than threat, and Emma felt the familiar flutter of tension, not fear, but the charged awareness that a turning point was approaching, the culmination of the storm, and the journey now visible in a single, suspended moment. She adjusted the blanket again, smoothing the folds around the newborn, drawing strength from the warmth, the soft weight against her chest a grounding force that balanced the rising sense of expectation, each breath synchronized with the small, steady movements of the infant, creating a shared rhythm of life, resilience, and hope. The cab's interior bathed in the soft morning glow filtering through frost-lined windows, a cocoon of security and reflection. Emma's mind traced the path that had brought her here, every step through snow and fear, the uncertainty and isolation, the surge of hope when the truck appeared, the relief of warmth and shelter, and now the quiet anticipation of what the approaching figure represented, the weight of past choices and future possibilities balanced. In a single gaze, the tension of what was yet to unfold lending gravity to the serene landscape, a contrast that made each detail more vivid, each sensation sharper. She allowed herself to feel the fullness of the moment, the storm of emotion from the night receding into clarity, her connection to her child anchoring her, and the promise of autonomy and self-possession rising like the morning sun, strong and inevitable. As the snow sparkled against the light, the cab's interior warm and steady, the figure waiting, silent, powerful, and entirely part of the unfolding story, marking the threshold of the next chapter in a life reclaimed, a journey endured, and the quiet triumph of survival and newfound strength. The cab finally slowed as the outskirts of town came into view, rooftops glinting under the rising sun, snow melting along the edges of streets and sidewalks, a soft golden light illuminating the world like a promise of new beginnings. And Emma Carter felt the weight of exhaustion lift slightly as the warmth of the engine and the steady hum of the truck reminded her that the storm had passed, if only outside, leaving her with the clarity to focus on the path ahead, each breath of her newborn a grounding force, steady and rhythmic, pulling her thoughts away from fear and toward the quiet determination that had carried her through the night. Jake Miller guided the truck carefully along the narrow streets, each turn precise, his presence calm and reassuring, allowing Emma to take in the details of the awakening town, the subtle scent of pine and wood smoke mingling with the crisp morning air, and she realized how much strength she had discovered within herself. The perseverance and courage required to endure the night now tangible in every line of her posture, in the steady way she held the child, in the clarity of her gaze as she scanned the horizon for the safe arrival point she sought. The black luxury SUV remained parked at a distance, its polished surface catching the sun, the figure inside poised and still, radiating quiet authority, and Emma felt the pull of anticipation, the weight of unspoken history and the presence of power before her, a moment suspended between what had been endured and the promise of what was to come, each heartbeat echoing in her chest as she braced herself for the next step. The journey that had begun in fear now approaching a threshold of resolution. She adjusted the blanket around her newborn, tucking the small body closer to her chest, feeling warmth and life press gently against her, a constant reminder of the responsibility and love that now defined her, and the cab's interior became a sanctuary, insulated from the lingering chill, a space where she could focus on her own resolve and the quiet triumph of survival, the sense of relief weaving slowly into her muscles and thoughts, reinforcing the confidence that had begun to form in the hours since the storm had left her alone in the snow. The scene outside shifted subtly, the snow reflecting the full light of the morning, rooftops sparkling and streets beginning to stir with activity, while Emma's eyes remained on the approaching figure, her mind cataloging each detail, the polished shoes, the measured posture, the sense of patience and awareness, the anticipation of a conversation, an interaction, a recognition of resilience met with a presence that once had commanded her world, and now confronted the strength she had nurtured through perseverance. In that moment, every sense heightened, the hum of the heater, the soft cooing of the infant, the sparkle of sunlight on the snow, the quiet authority of the distant figure, all combined to create a tableau rich with tension, promise, and reflection, the narrative of endurance, survival, and newly claimed autonomy converging as Emma Carter prepared to step from the cab into the warmth and possibility awaiting, every heartbeat affirming the power of resilience, the bond with her child, and the anticipation of a life reclaimed, ready to meet whatever unfolded next with courage and quiet confidence. Emma Carter finally guided the truck to a small, snow-covered driveway leading to a modest, yet welcoming house at the edge of town, the morning sun glinting off frost-coated windows and casting long, soft shadows across the yard, the quiet neighborhood awakening with the gentle hum of distant voices and the occasional bark of a dog echoing across the crisp air, and she felt a wave of relief settle over her, the warmth of the cab and the steady presence of Jake Miller providing a buffer from the trials of the night, while the soft coos of her newborn reminded her that this journey had been about more than survival. It was about reclaiming a sense of safety and autonomy that had been taken from her. As she stepped out onto the packed snow, boots crunching softly, the crisp air biting at her cheeks, Emma adjusted the blanket around the infant, drawing the little one close, feeling the soft rise and fall of each breath, a tangible reminder of the bond they shared and the resilience she had discovered within herself, and the world beyond the cab suddenly seemed brighter, each detail sharp and vivid. The glint of ice on the branches, the delicate sparkle of frost on the mailbox, the soft sway of a tree in the morning breeze, all part of the canvas upon which she would now build a life of stability and warmth. Jake Miller followed closely, offering his hand for balance and silently sharing in the satisfaction of having guided them safely through the snowstorm, his eyes scanning the area, noting the clarity and calm that had replaced the chaos of the night, and Emma felt gratitude bloom quietly within her, a recognition that while the storm had tested her, it had also revealed the depth of her own courage and the protective instinct that now defined her every movement. The black luxury SUV remained in the distance, its figure still poised and composed, and Emma noticed the subtle shift in posture as the driver acknowledged her arrival with a careful, measured glance, a silent understanding passing through the space between them, the tension of expectation lingering in the sunlight-drenched air, charged but calm, a recognition of endurance, strength, and the unspoken acknowledgement that she and her child were no longer vulnerable to the whims of the past. Stepping into the house, Emma felt the warmth of the interior envelop her, the faint scent of polished wood and clean linen creating an immediate sense of home and security. Her arms holding the infant close as she guided them through the door, each movement deliberate, measured, and filled with purpose, the quiet assurance of safety providing a stark contrast to the cold, unforgiving landscape they had traversed, and yet the memory of the night's trials lent weight to every breath, every heartbeat, reinforcing the quiet triumph of survival. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching on small details, the silver knobs of cabinets, the texture of a wool rug, the glint of frost melting against the panes. And Emma allowed herself a small, private smile, a feeling of accomplishment and anticipation mingling, knowing that this space, however modest, was now a sanctuary, a foundation upon which she would rebuild, guided by the lessons of endurance, the strength of maternal instinct, and the quiet but profound recognition that the next chapter of their lives would be shaped entirely by her choices, her courage, and the unshakable bond with the child she had protected through a night that had tested every fiber of her being. Morning had fully broken across the small town as Emma Carter stepped onto the front porch, the snow from last night glinting like scattered diamonds under the bright sun, and she felt the steady warmth of her child pressed against her chest, each tiny movement a comforting rhythm that mirrored the quiet strength now coursing through her. The cab of the truck parked behind them, Jake Miller stepping out to adjust the blankets one last time, his presence steady and calm, a reminder of the night they had survived and the care that had carried them through the storm, the subtle sound of boots on packed snow punctuating the crisp air as he moved with purpose yet without urgency, allowing Emma to focus entirely on the small, safe world she had brought them to. She inhaled deeply, the cold air filling her lungs and mingling with the faint scent of pine and chimney smoke, grounding her. Each exhale a release of the tension that had gripped her since the previous night. And in that moment the full weight of survival and endurance settled in her, a quiet pride and recognition of the resilience she had found in herself, the sense of accomplishment tempered by the ongoing responsibility she now carried for her newborn. Through the frost-lined windows of the modest house, the interior glowed softly with natural light, casting delicate patterns across the wooden floor, and Emma's gaze followed the shifting shadows, noting every detail, the curve of the staircase, the soft texture of a rug, the gentle sway of curtains in a slight morning breeze, each element a symbol of safety, stability, and the promise of a new chapter built entirely on her terms. Outside, the black luxury SUV remained, its presence a distant reminder of the past and the authority that had once shaped her life, yet now it seemed almost ornamental, a silent witness to the transformation she had undergone. The tension between what had been and what now was balanced delicately in the bright morning light, the contrast of power and independence stark but serene. Emma adjusted the blanket again, her fingers tracing the small contours of the child beneath, feeling warmth, life, and the unspoken promise of protection, each motion a reaffirmation of her autonomy and the hard-won confidence she now embodied. The cab behind them a final thread connecting them to the trials they had endured and the guidance that had allowed them to reach this threshold. She paused, looking out. Across the street, the town beginning to stir with life, neighbors appearing at windows and doorways, children beginning to play along cleared sidewalks, the ordinary rhythm of morning filling the space with calm and continuity, and she recognized that each step forward now would be deliberate, intentional, guided by experience and the bond she shared with her child, the sound of cooing a gentle counterpoint to the awakening world around her. The figure in the SUV finally moved, acknowledging their presence with a subtle nod, a gesture that carried no threat, only recognition, and Emma felt the tension in her shoulders ease, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of having reached a place of safety and possibility, the sunlight glinting off the snow and the polished metal, reflecting the brightness of the future awaiting them inside the modest home. Every detail of the porch, the snow, the warm light, the faint smell of chimney smoke, the steady heartbeat of the child, combined to create a tableau of hope, endurance, and a new beginning. a moment suspended yet fully alive, signaling that Emma Carter had survived the storm, protected the life she carried, and stood ready to embrace a chapter defined by courage, independence, and the profound bond that would guide every step forward. Emma Carter stepped inside the modest home, the door closing softly behind her, shutting out the crisp winter light, and leaving her in a space filled with warmth. The faint scent of pine and polished wood blending with the gentle heat that spread from the radiators, and she paused to take in the scene. The cozy interior a stark contrast to the cold, relentless snow of the night before. Every detail, soft rugs, carefully placed furniture, the subtle glow of morning sunlight filtering through, sheer curtains, acting as a reminder that this was now a sanctuary she could claim for herself and her child. The newborn in her arms stirred slightly, eyes blinking against the gentle light, and Emma allowed herself to breathe, the tension that had gripped her for hours easing into a quiet satisfaction, each movement deliberate, steady, reinforcing the bond that had kept them both safe. The rhythmic cooing of the child filling the room with a sense of continuity and life, a gentle reminder of the strength they had both relied upon. She set the infant down on a prepared crib, watching the soft rise and fall of its chest, feeling the depth of accomplishment in having brought them to safety, and for the first time since the night began, allowed her mind to drift beyond immediate survival to the possibilities ahead, the choices she could make, the home she could shape, the life she could rebuild from the foundations of courage and perseverance that had carried her through the storm. Outside, the black luxury SUV remained parked a short distance away, its presence subtle but deliberate, a silent observer, and Emma felt the shift in perception. The power once held over her reduced to a quiet acknowledgement of endurance and resilience, a recognition that the past no longer dictated the terms of her life. The authority that had seemed imposing before now rendered almost ceremonial against the reality of her agency and self-possession. She moved through the rooms with care, noting the way. The light caught the edges of furniture, the small imperfections and charms that made the space welcoming, the warmth of the home complementing the warmth in her heart. Each step a reclamation of personal space and autonomy. Each glance at the child a reaffirmation of the responsibility and joy that now defined her purpose. Jake Miller followed silently, offering assistance when necessary, his steady presence a reminder of the support and guidance that had helped navigate the perilous night. And Emma felt a quiet gratitude, the combination of human kindness and personal strength coalescing into a profound sense of empowerment, the moment suspended yet alive with possibility. As she settled into a chair near the window, the infant cradled safely, Emma allowed her eyes to drift outward, observing the snow melting slowly in the morning sun, the neighborhood awakening in soft, measured movements, children beginning to laugh and play, the ordinary rhythm of life continuing undisturbed. And she recognized the full extent of her triumph, not in confrontation or vengeance, but in survival, in protection, and in the reclaiming of her space, her choices, and her time. In the quiet of the home, filled with the soft hum of warmth and the life of her child, Emma Carter understood that the night's trials had forged a new sense of self, one defined by resilience, clarity, and the unshakable bond with the life she had nurtured, and she felt ready to face whatever came next, guided by the lessons of endurance, the power of maternal instinct, and the quiet knowledge that she had already conquered the storm. Emma Carter sat quietly in the soft morning light, her newborn nestled against her chest, the room filled with warmth and the faint scent of pine from the snow outside. Each breath she took steadying her, each coo of the child a gentle reminder of the life she had preserved against impossible odds. And she allowed herself to feel the depth of relief and accomplishment, the quiet pride of having navigated a night that could have overwhelmed even the strongest of wills. The black luxury SUV remained visible through the window, parked at a respectful distance, a silent witness to the passage of time and the transformation that had occurred, and Emma noticed the subtle way the figure inside observed, composed yet attentive, a contrast to the chaos that had defined the previous hours, and she realized that the power she now held was not in confrontation, but in the serenity, independence, and control she had reclaimed, every detail of her posture and movements radiating calm confidence. She moved through the home with deliberate care, adjusting the blanket around the infant, walking to the window and gazing at the thawing snow, the town beginning to stir with activity, neighbors emerging from doors, smoke curling gently from chimneys, and the ordinary rhythm of morning offering a stark contrast to the tension and peril of the night before, each detail reinforcing the sense of safety, possibility, and the promise of a new chapter. Jake Miller remained nearby, observing with a quiet vigilance, his steady presence a subtle reminder that support had guided them to this point. But Emma understood that the true strength came from within, the resilience she had cultivated during hours of fear, uncertainty, and perseverance, and the bond with her child which grounded every thought and action, creating a foundation upon which she would continue to build. She allowed herself to envision the days ahead, small routines of feeding, warmth, and gentle laughter, the creation of a home that would be filled with life and love, free from the shadows of abandonment. Each step forward a testament to her agency and autonomy, each decision a reflection of the courage that had carried them to safety, and she felt the quiet power of choice settle firmly in her heart. The sunlight spilling across the room highlighted the textures of furniture and fabric, the glint of frost melting against the window, and Emma noted the gentle movement of the child, the soft rise and fall of its chest, the small fingers curling, and in these details she found not just reassurance, but a profound sense of purpose and continuity, a recognition that the journey through the night had forged a stronger, more determined version of herself. Outside, the SUV figure moved slightly, acknowledging them without intrusion, a subtle gesture that seemed to respect the boundaries of the new space Emma had created, reinforcing the awareness that while the past remained as context, it held no control, and the quiet strength and safety of the home were hers alone. She settled into a chair near the window, child cradled securely, the room now filled with the soft, natural light of morning, the calm rhythm of life pressing gently against the memory of hardship, and Emma Carter allowed a small, serene smile to form, a recognition that the trials had not broken her, but had instead revealed the depth of her endurance, the quiet power of her maternal instinct, and the unwavering bond with the life she had protected, each heartbeat affirming that the night's struggle had culminated not in fear or loss, but in survival, empowerment, and the first steps of a future she now fully owned. Emma Carter stood by the window, the soft golden light of late morning spilling across the room, catching the edges of frost still clinging to the panes, and she felt a deep, resonant calm settle over her, the rhythmic breathing of her newborn in her arms anchoring her in a moment that was both quiet and profoundly transformative. Each small motion of the child a reminder of the life she had preserved and the strength she had summoned to endure the night's trials. She turned slowly, eyes scanning the modest interior she now called home, noting the warmth radiating from the radiators, the gentle glow of sunlight on polished wood, the soft textures of rugs and blankets, each element a testament to stability, comfort, and the sense of sanctuary she had carved from fear and uncertainty. The quiet hum of life within these walls a stark contrast to the isolation and harshness she had faced outside in the snow. Beyond the window, the town stirred gently, neighbors appearing at doors, and along cleared sidewalks, the ordinary cadence of morning life unfolding, and Emma allowed herself a moment to envision the days ahead. Feeding, warmth, laughter, quiet walks, and the small routines that would shape the bond between her and her child. The smallest details imbued with significance, each choice now fully hers, guided by resilience and intuition rather than fear or expectation. The black luxury SUV remained a silent observer at the edge of the property, its polished surface reflecting the sun, a reminder of the past and the authority that had once loomed over her, yet now reduced to a quiet acknowledgement of endurance, a presence that underscored how far she had come, the tension of past power replaced by the confidence she carried, the strength and independence that had emerged from a night of adversity and perseverance. She settled into a chair near the window, cradling the infant securely, feeling the soft warmth of the little body, the gentle rise and fall of each breath, and in that steady rhythm found reassurance, a symbol of life, hope, and the future she would shape with care and intention. her mind tracing the journey that had brought them here, the isolation, the cold, the fear, and the way each challenge had strengthened her resolve and deepened her sense of purpose. Sunlight streamed more fully into the room, casting delicate patterns on walls and floor, the frost catching in tiny sparkles like fragments of stars, and Emma allowed herself a small, serene smile, a private acknowledgement of survival, triumph, and the quiet, unshakable power she now embodied, a power defined not by wealth or authority, but by courage, compassion, and the bond with her child. She glanced again toward the distant SUV, noting the composed figure inside, its presence respectful, observing but not intruding, a silent recognition of the transformation she had undergone and the autonomy she now held, the past no longer dictating the terms of her life, the boundaries firmly established, the sense of control and agency absolute. The room, the sunlight, the soft sounds of the awakening town, the warmth of the home and the life she had protected, all combined to form a tableau of possibility, endurance, and hope, and Emma Carter understood fully that the storm had passed, not only outside but within her spirit, leaving her ready to step into the next chapter with confidence, strength, and the unwavering knowledge that she had survived, endured, and emerged unbroken, the bond with her child the guiding light for every choice yet to come.